We're continuing our series of shows. With us in the studio is Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello, everyone. And our topic for today is the circle of our responsibility and the essence of our connection. Today we'd like to talk about the integrality of humanity, about the law of mutual responsibility on the level of society, and the wisdom of Kabbalah as the method for the correction of the whole of humanity. Short exposition. Where did integrality come from altogether? From what I learned, about 13.5 billion years ago, after the Big Bang, matter, time, space appeared. A few hundreds of thousands of years later, molecules, atoms, started joining into molecules, and that's how matter appeared. And afterwards, we know that more complex substances appeared. A few billions of years ago, you already had living organisms, and 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, the thinking human, appeared. That also started uniting already in a society into different tribes. Afterwards began the imperial integration, then economic, religious. Today it's the integration of information. So actually we can say that nature, if it has some kind of thought, then it's moving us precisely to this kind of connection. On the one hand. Right. On the other hand, we also see how the ego is growing. There is differentiation going on if we take people from a few thousands of years ago and today. Obviously, individualism grew very much. So today we'd like to talk about the law of integration, not about the ego, but precisely about the law that is constantly uniting us. And Yuval Harari, he's a historian. He wrote a very interesting book where he writes that a big mass of people that are unfamiliar with one another can work together successfully if united by myth. And this is what he actually says, that what made man a man is our ability for abstract thinking. That if monkeys, for example, could connect into groups of up to 150, suppose, tops, then people could connect, millions of people could connect together. Suppose in ancient Babylon, about 1 million people lived there. And obviously there need to be some kind of communicational structures, etc. So what is it about man that doesn't exist in animals that gives them the ability for abstract thinking, connecting, increased ego? Aside of the animal ego, there is an additional ego that separates us much more strongly than animals. The thing is that animals, they unite or connect since they feel that they gain from it egoistically. And for them, it's the main thing. It's food and continuing the generation, the species. Man, even if he'll have food and the ability to continue the generation, he needs a few more serious achievements for the sake of which he will or will not unite. Thus, in humanity compared to animals exists a tremendous differentiation, and along with it, integration. Meaning, objects are broken up into many, many particular objects, and they connect between themselves in a different scheme, in a different system, than when they once were one object. We also see it today in the world. There are also all the time going on different unions, and they're breaking up. Unions, and they're breaking up all the time. But nonetheless, all that advances humanity, nonetheless, because when there is some kind of shattering, then the particles of it could be people, groups of people, countries, they divide into smaller parts, each of which differs from others in some specific way, and then when they unite, then their connection is more qualitatively better than in the past. And thus, this kind of process of progress that's going on, the shattering, and then connection, it all the time progresses. It all the time leads to more and more qualitative integration, along with the recognition of the evil of your ego, along with it, is attained, achieved. How could we unite above it without destroying the ego, but by using it correctly? And here appear many different methods, theories in all realms of human life. By the way, integration by definition comes from the Latin word integratio, meaning renewal or restoration, and also to make whole and complete, meaning it once was and now it's restored. Also, the process of connection, of mutual incorporation of different parts into a whole, meaning it's not just connection, but it's mutual incorporation. Right, it's especially mutual completion, supplementation, and the process of mutual nearing and the creation of mutual relations. Meaning qualitatively, it's a completely new product or society or government, qualitatively new, because all of its previous parts, divided, dispersed, each of them somehow took on a new form and once again start reconnecting on a new level. Another interesting definition for integration is that it's a specific relationship between at least two subjects where both are willingly realizing their desires and interests. Right. What's interesting is that it needs to be willingly, otherwise it's not integration. Otherwise it's coercion, like in nature, like atom and molecules were constantly connected by nature for billions of years and matter was formed, etc. But here, it's on the level of society. Subconsciously, you can also say that the same is happening here with people. Right, no one's asking us as well. But there's also a different kind of integration, spiritual one, where a person already needs to choose and lead himself toward integration by the power of will, a non-egoistic integration, one that is above the ego, desired integration. There's already a completely different form of connection, of parts that are opposed to one another, that mutually reject each other. There's need here to acquire some kind of a new point of view of the world in which integration will really be beneficial by other parameters, criteria, that actually I don't gain anything by connection besides one thing. I rise a level higher than the previous one. Not egoistically wise, not in the same key in which I was previously, like connection happens constantly between countries, etc. But where for me the process itself and being above the previous state is preferable. And there's an interesting process where this integration, the mutual incorporation, etc., needs to be on the background of a great ego, meaning it's easy to connect molecules on the still level, even some animals we see how they connect in a herd, etc. Even people, primitive people, like primitive societies, there were communistic societies. Everything was common, there was equality. But explicit egoists, it's very hard to connect them. You can see how everything is falling apart, families and everything. So the question is, what is it necessary all for? What is nature pushing us towards? Nature is pushing us towards showing us how egoistic we are, how individualistic we are, how we're incapable of being integrated into something on the one hand. On the other hand, how we cannot exist without this integration. Meaning, here appear conditions for the freedom of choice. See what you can do like this, see what you can do like that, and choose. It's called choose life. So if I understand correctly, it simply gives us a higher degree, qualitatively higher level of connection when different, opposite people connect. Yes, but here we need to choose a completely different method for connection, key purpose of connection. It needs to be according to completely different criteria, meaning I connect not in order to benefit or gain from this connection in my ordinary ego, but I connect I go into this connection because I wish to achieve a quality that is higher than my ego, a quality higher that's embedded in my egoistic nature. So practically, that nature shattered, broke us up over thousands of years into many, many different parts, opposite to each other, and each part accumulated ego in itself. Eventually, this needs to express itself in that I will reject my ego, meaning use it, only in order to rise above it. This is actually the new principle of connection. So, how this integration manifests and the connections between us, you can see it in several processes that you can observe in our world, like the butterfly effect, domino effect, where something happens in one place, suppose like now, the stock market fell, and it's felt all around the world. Or a revolution is happening in one place, immediately it's felt everywhere else. And what's interesting is that there are many different kinds of effects, like the effect of social laziness, the effect of conformism, of imitation, the effect of group ego, of presence, where a person feels on himself, suppose how other people are watching him. He doesn't even see them watching him. But where does it all come from? These are all egoistic qualities. There's nothing new here. When the ego starts already to feel that on the one hand it wants to connect in order to subordinate everything to itself, and on the other hand, when it connects, it sees that it's working against him. And there, in the egoism, in the ego itself, appears the recognition of its own evil. But where's the way out? Perhaps this is the state in which the world exists in today. Meaning we see that we're incapable of forming a correct, proper family, society, government, or world. Human nature is killing us. Will not allow us to exist in a good, nice, normal way. Will nonetheless think about how to subordinate, suppress, or even to destroy the other, and by it, bringing ourselves to a state of mutual annihilation. And this is our nature, and nothing we can do about it. There are many theories that have all practically exhausted themselves, have shown themselves as unsuitable, unfit for realization, that we can't do anything about our ego, but we simply exist. We simply exist. We've become completely despaired of different methods, disillusioned about the different methods. People are no longer burning with changing society, creating some world revolutions. It's all things of the past. Since there is no way, no option to somehow get along with our egoistic nature. A few dozens of years ago, it didn't exist. Today, a tremendous amount of psychologists talk about the ego, that this is the only thing that exists in man, that's aimed against our connection, and it's harmful to us. Previously, we didn't have that. Right, and we can't do anything about it. Previously, we did not acknowledge it. We didn't think about it. We talked about it. Even philosophers from the Middle Ages constantly disputed about whether man's inclination is evil or good. Many said that his inclination is good from the start, but today everyone understands that there's nothing besides evil. So here, there's a different method that says that we can rise above our nature and start connecting according to a new principle. This is the principle of altruism, of mutual bestowal, love, connection. But for that, we need to receive a power that is above the ego. So I wanted to ask about that. It's the first time, as I understand, that people have united, not in a forceful way, but consciously, and started keeping the law of mutual responsibility was on Mount Sinai, as it is written, in the Pentateuch, meaning for the very first time, an enormous amount of people, I'm not talking about small groups, but as Maimonides writes, 3 million people came out of Egypt, and there were also Egyptians that came out. Well, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that these were those that understood the necessity to connect. So what exactly happened there? 3 million people, it said about them, if you accept the law of mutual responsibility, good. If not, this will be your burial place. So it says in the Talmud, etc. It means that if you want to rise above the ego, then you can really acquire a force that will lift you, raise you. With the help of this force, you will be able to rise and unite, and this way you will feel the world and yourself in a completely different form, light, way, system of connections between you, where you'll connect between yourselves not by egoistic criteria or laws or habits, but when you will all the time try to rise above yourselves and relate to each other only with an opposite to the ego quality of bestowal, love, mutual influence over one another. What does it actually mean? We shall do and then we shall hear. Meaning that until we perform this action on ourselves, we don't understand what's embedded in it. We don't feel what can we achieve. Because man, he feels only that which is in his sensations, feelings. This he understands, this he feels and senses and sees. If here it says that we need to attain the upper world, the quality of love and bestowal and altruistic connection between us, that this is what we need to reveal. So for that, we first of all need to discover it, and from its revelation, we'll understand what it's about. So we shall do and we shall hear. It means that a person makes an effort, like a child playing makes an effort, and by it he grows. Yes, same thing here. When we make an effort to connect, even though that we understand that we can't, then we shall hear. We shall hear, like we said before, that it's a degree. It's the degree of bestowal and love. Degree of bestowal, bina. To hear means a certain connection with the Creator. Right. And then it says, we will do and we will hear, means that each member of the nation became responsible, that no member of the nation will lack anything. Meaning each relates to the entire group of people. What is a nation? It's a group of people that each relates to this group of people as responsible for their spiritual state, that he needs to support them, and that they will all the time be in, that everyone will be in the quality of mutual bestowal and an altruistic intention toward one another. With this collective responsibility, each member of the nation was liberated from worrying about the needs of his own body and could observe the mitzvah, the precept of love your friend as yourself. And here we enter completely different qualities of nature where it simply fulfills us with absolute wholeness, perfection, and abundance. If we think only about the well-being of others, we become a conductor of this higher degree of abundance through ourselves onto others. And to add that from the story we see that it became impossible, it became possible, this kind of communication between these people, only when the Creator became revealed to them. Meaning before the Creator is revealed, a person can't act that way. What does it mean, the revelation of the Creator? You need to understand that it's a result of great lacks, as we start seeing today in our world, for example. People start acknowledging that there is no other way, that their egoistic interaction will lead to a world war, death, etc. Meaning it's a dead end. It's not development. It's falling up to the point of disappearing, vanishing. And here a different path opens up. But here there is need for very serious psychological elation above yourself. transcension. If people support one another and want for it to happen, this is what happens to them. It depends only on their conscious, mutual decision. And when they decide this way, that's it, from this moment on, we must be in this state toward each other and bestow love, care, mutual fulfillment. They're facing either simply to disappear, death, as it says, this is the place of your burial or of your elation, one of the two. If people feel that this is the state that they're in, then it happens to them. So can we say that this is the first time in history where such a large group of people came to this kind of connection? Yeah, the only time. And it's interesting, philosophers write about this, and historians from the Middle Ages, from other times, that they read about that time, that for about 200 years after that group of people walked in the desert and entered the land of Israel, they had no king. Meaning King David, he appeared only about 200 years afterwards. So it's interesting, the form itself, how this enormous mass of people governed themselves. They were self-governed. They were divided into tens, hundreds, thousands, 12 tribes, major groups, and this is how they were governed. So as long as the importance of the unity of this group of people existed, they could support the mutual responsibility, and over time it dissipated and they rose to a very high degree of connection between them, of mutual bestowal. Practically, well, there are higher levels, but practically to the highest level that man can attain. And now we're shifting to our time. 3,000 years of human development went by, the ego grew obviously, and Bala Sulam in his article, The Last Generation, he says, what are the conditions that need to be met so that once again we, as a group of people, or all of humanity, today already talks about the whole of humanity, what do we need to do in order to be able to observe this law that today seems completely utopian if you look at what goes on? He says that only after a society, and he's talking about the whole of humanity, that wishes to come to the realization of the laws of mutual responsibility will become economically independent, will they be able to become responsible for one another. What does he mean? It means that actually there needs to be the recognition of evil in society today, once again, in order to come out of the ego, because today, once again, we're in exile, just like back then in Egypt. Meaning, there needs to be the recognition of the exile, the recognition of the ego as our common enemy, the pharaoh that's enslaving us, not allowing us to exist. Not to simply exist on the normal animal level, but on a higher level that is programmed in the plan of nature, pre-planned in the plan of nature. And thus today we already need to begin a different ascent, meaning from the egoistic interactions between us to come to the recognition that it is finite, that it brings to a dead end, brings us only harm and a threat to our entire existence, and that we have to rise from it. What does it mean that the society needs to be independent economically? Meaning that today we've reached this kind of state where it is not a problem for us to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, etc., provide for everything that we need. By minimum efforts can we make it so that everyone will have everything that they need. But as long as we're immersed in the ego, see what happens. So he sets this as a condition that when we will do this, then we can turn to the right. The ego, in its development in us, brings us to a state where, on the one hand, we've developed to a degree where we can make this place a heaven on earth, an egoistic, material heaven on earth. On the other hand, the same ego doesn't allow us to do it. Out of the 8 billion people, 1 billion are starving to the point of people starving to death. And also you have mafia, drugs, you name it. The families breaking up, etc., etc. Meaning there are no happy people. So even though that we have achieved tremendous abilities and opportunities, amazing opportunities to make our world heaven on earth, we're turning it into hell. And with each day, it becomes more and more evident. Okay, so it's clear. A small group of people can begin trying to realize this law, but the whole of humanity, only after all of these necessary needs will be satisfied, basic needs will be satisfied, and then the whole of humanity needs to understand that it is in their hands the ability to rise to a level where we will make this place a heaven on earth, and not only on earth, but that we'll start feeling ourselves in wholeness and completion. And the second condition that Bala Sulam writes about is that as long as even one individual is troubled with concern for himself, the entire society cannot begin to observe the law of mutual responsibility. Well, of course, this ideally speaking, you can't immediately hop into this state like into a passing by train. You can gradually build it by scrutinizing, teaching, educating the population. It's not a simple path, Bala Sulam writes about it. He says that it's possible to come to the observation of this law only through slow, gradual, conscious development. Yeah? Such interdependence, if there's just one person who's troubled with concerns for himself, the others can't keep this law. Right, because if this interdependence is integral, if we all exist in one closed system, then any kind of disregard toward the qualities of bestowal, love, connection, integration between themselves, it distorts the entire general system, and in that measure, everyone suffers. So this is something that you need to approach gradually through education, through circulation, gradual implementation. Another condition for the implementation of the law of mutual responsibility is that everyone makes their contribution to the formation of a critical mass for the practical implementation of this law on all levels. Yeah. So it depends on each and every one. Right. Maximum voluntary participation. And another condition, there are many of them, the law of mutual responsibility encompasses the entire world, because one nation is not enough in order to achieve the correction of the entire world. Right. No one nation or group of people will be able to achieve wholeness and perfection in their existence unless they will be supported by the even full participation of all other people living in the world. Thus, the law of mutual responsibility will eventually oblige us for us to realize it to its full extent by the whole of humanity. Further, he says that the general mutual responsibility frees every individual of any concerns. Right? If I care for others, then I don't have to care about myself because others will care about me. When we say to care, we say that material needs are provided for, because only after that do we turn to mutual responsibility. So suppose we don't have any of these problems, because people can say, I can't even provide for myself, I have an overdraft at the bank, etc. But here we're saying that everyone has some kind of an equal, suitable level, and today it's pretty easy to provide these things with all the machinery and everything, robots. So if all the material things, etc., are already taken care of, so what do I have left to worry about for others? So that they won't fall from the highest level of bestowal towards society, as will I. By worrying about them, I don't worry about myself, but about them. So this way, I already guarantee for myself that I will not fall from the degree of bestowal, and they, in their turn, about me. How does it show? This is the quality of mutual responsibility, the so-called arvut. I'm supposed to support their spirit, or how? I support them both internally by my desires. that affect the general force in which society exists, and by my actions and example and everything that I can, I support society in its mutual process of bestowal. In conclusion, Bala Sulam writes in the introduction to the Book of Zohar, do not be surprised that one person's actions bring elevation or decline to the whole world, for it is an unbreakable law that the general and the particular are equal, like 2 drops of water. Hence, all that applies to the general applies also to the particular, and vice versa, of course. It's frightening to think, one person, everything depends on him. Well, if we're a complete system, whole and complete system, and this is how nature created us, as a whole and complete system, then obviously if someone breaches something in this system, then this breaching is felt in every block, in every connection, in everything. And thus we need to think about how to bring the system to absolute perfection, complete integral connection. Well, suppose that this is how it is. We can theoretically imagine that that's how it is, but how can I be responsible for some person that I don't even know, that lives someplace? If I care for everyone, then I need to do everything so that none of them will fall and that they will all actively participate in the general integral connection. So I don't need to know him personally. No, it's impossible. I simply do that which is up to me. We're working with this law. We're working so that this law will be kept. We're working with a network of forces that connects us. Okay, so this was a lesson about mutual responsibility, non-simple system. Well, of course, it's ideal. Maybe it sounds too much of a fantasy, maybe like a fairy tale, but eventually humanity will have to come to it because it's the law of nature. And nature is integral, one, and will bring us. It's only children, so to speak, who have free choice, that we will willingly agree to this kind of mutual participation in it. Thank you very much for being with us. Till next time, all the best.